Because you know what happened to me like a couple of weeks ago. So we started the podcast, and 15 minutes down the line, we were like, "Oh God damn it! I forgot to press the
Oh no,
the
you didn't even
button."
press record. No.
Yeah, no, no. So we're recording now, so we're safe. We can cut this a little bit. Once we decide. So as I said, we're just going to have a nice conversation.
Yep.
I'm going to post the questions in the chat on the side, so you'll be able to see them.
Yep.
So we don't go off the track massively.
Okay.
Okay, let me see.
I'm on my mobile, so it might help me if you just
Uh,
put them to me because it's a
okay.
smaller display.
Okay, I will ask you again, so don't worry. I think it's
Cheers.
just for me, so I'll remember.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll crack on.
Yep.
Hi everyone. We are again at the BetBlocker podcast. So today we have Phil with us. Phil is a veteran in the gambling industry. How long have you been working in gambling, Phil?
In total, 22 years now.
Wow. I always have this joke that a year in the gambling industry is like a dog year. So that's a lot of dog years, like we multiply by 7. Uh, could you tell us a little bit how did you end up working in the gambling industry and in safer gambling?
Yeah, sure. Dating back to probably 2002,
Uh-huh.
I was working at that time in security, and I was doing things like closed circuit TV and watching people plain clothes, following people around stores, etc., etc.
Okay.
And the actual industry was getting quite dangerous, to be fair, because there was people carrying hypodermic needles and people who would be prepared to carry a Stanley knife and basically assault you just to get away with £10 worth of shopping. So there was one day I was working and I thought this industry is getting a bit crazy now, and I'd always been a gambler. So I thought,
Okay.
okay, well, gambling comes. I've been gambling since I was 18 years old. I'm 53 now. So I thought, okay, maybe get a job in gambling because it was second nature to me to gamble. I understood the betting rules and the different types of sports. So I applied for a job with a company in the UK doing telephone betting. Back
Okay.
in the day, they was called Fred Dome telephone betting. They later became Betfred as we know them today. So I started working in the call center that they had in Manchester, and I worked there for 2 years. And I got talking to a guy who started as a trader, and my job was a team leader. So this guy said, nice to meet you. How is it working here at this company, etc., etc. And I had to train him. So I said, where have you come from? And he said, Gibraltar. I'd never heard of the place. So
Okay.
he told me how good Gibraltar was, the weather, everything about it. And I said, well, if it's so good, why aren't you still working there? So he said, well, basically, his wife was homesick.
Okay.
So he sold it to me. I said, it sounds great. If you can get me an interview, I'd love to try this place. And 20 years later, here I am. So I originally came to Gib and joined a company called Stan James, who was doing
Yeah.
telephone betting. Stayed there for quite a number of years before moving on and joining Betfred as they moved over from Manchester to Gibraltar. Moved around a couple of companies, and I got to a stage where I was at William Hill on the VIP team. And probably around 2013, 2014, it was becoming very clear that we needed to implement safer gambling, or as it was back then, responsible gambling, and start to look after the customers better rather than have an attitude where people were losing money and we weren't checking in with them. we needed to do some things very, very quickly. So the vacancy came up at William Hill in customer due diligence, and I jumped at the chance to get involved. It was something new, and I fancied a change. And since that day, I've done due diligence, I've done source of funds, I've done responsible gambling, I've done safer gambling. So my journey started in compliance with William Hill around 2014. So yeah, around 10 years now I've been working within compliance.
Wow. It's funny because when you mentioned telebetting, I remember, when I started working in the gambling industry, like most of our calls or of our contact were through the phone, were like ring after ring. Yeah, that's it's crazy. These days nobody calls, to
Exactly.
anyone. Just only messages or chat and stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because it's a long time that you have been in Gibraltar. What did you like from the Rock? Do you live in Gibraltar, or do you live in Spain?
Well, when I first moved here, the company, as I say, Stan James, they paid for your flights. They even paid for 3 months accommodation for you. So a lot of people were thinking, well, even if this doesn't work out, it's a holiday. So, but I knew within 3 months, Pedro, I could tell that I liked the place. And I came in November 2024. So at that time, the weather's not great. My 3 months was November, December, January, so the winter months. But I just got a feel about the place, a real positive, good feel from the weather, from the people, and everything about it. Even though I'm not a smoker, the tobacco was cheap to smoke if you was a smoker. the alcohol was cheap if you like to drink spirits. So there was a lot to like, and very limited things not to like, really. So I knew within 3 months of being here that this was for me. The language was English. I could walk into a restaurant and get fish and chips. The home comforts that maybe some people were missing were here. So I remember years ago, Pedro, there was a program on Channel 4. I think it was Channel 4 or Channel 5 called Gibraltar, Britain in the Sun. And that is basically what this place is. So for anyone who's never ever been to Gibraltar, I'd recommend they come, because 20 years later, here I am still going and happy.
We live in in the Spanish side. My wife is British, and when she gets homesick, we just drive there, do a little bit of shopping, as you said, the home comforts, and then drive back. And it's what you say, it's a piece of Britain in the sun.
Very much.
With all this time in the industry, and in safer gambling, how has it changed? Because I remember before, like sort of safer gambling was okay. We just warn this person with an email, and we're covered. And now things are very different.
Yeah, it's true, because I remember back in the early days of working in William Hill and the due diligence team and the different departments I worked for there, and account validation. If you send anyone a message, how do you know it's not got into the junk? How do you know they've seen it? You can't just send an email and hope they've read it, because they might not read it. So I always used to encourage, and I still do to this day, whoever I work with, let's pick up the phone, let's speak to that person as a common courtesy for one. Let's talk to them. There may be instances where people don't want to talk to you. Different instances, they might, have problems with personal problems, whether they have anxiety, etc., or maybe hard of hearing. So then you can look at alternatives. But I think wherever possible, we should all try and speak to the customer. You gauge so much more from that telephone interaction by the tone of the voice. You ask them the question. If they pause, maybe they're thinking of making up an answer. So I believe that picking up the phone is still the best form of having an interaction with a person. But yes, you can also be creative and innovative. I remember working at one operator where we WhatsApped customers just to check in with them. And we trialed it just to make sure, rather than no one replying to the emails, we said, okay, let's use WhatsApp. Let's give it a go. Probably around 2016, this would be. And we WhatsApped 100 customers. I think we got maybe 80 where we had the double blue ticks to say they'd read and received it. And then 50 actually replied to us and said, thank you for your message. I've read this and I'm fine. Or thank you, can you call me? Whatever that may be. So I think you've got to use everything at your disposal. You've got to exhaust every avenue in order to reach out and establish that the customer is okay, they are gambling safely, because until you have that confirmation, you simply don't know.
It's I think it's you're right. The best way to gauge is just talking to the other person, and also being good and being at ease with talking. I remember I joined once a company, head of safer gambling, and they were not calling customers. I said, look guys, we need to call customers, and everybody in the safer gambling team was like, revolting, like, oh my God, we moved to the safer gambling team not to have to speak with customers anymore. So, like, sorry guys, if you want to do safer gambling, you need to call and talk to them, And I think, sometimes it's the initial fear, that we say, most of the time people, they're going to be grateful, or they generally can, or if they don't want to talk, okay, maybe there's a reason, and you need to have a, a closer look. But at the end of the day, we're people, and we should be okay talking to each other. What's up? Because we're talking about innovation and all of that. But do you think nowadays, I don't know, like companies are asked to do too much, or they can still to do more? It's really like sometimes, okay, you need to, payments, proof of everything, check with the customers, some customer may be like, okay, this is a bit too much. If I go to this, company, they don't ask me any questions, so it's easier. What are your thoughts about, finding the right balance?
I think that personally, and from experience of companies, different companies I've worked for, you're right, they do all have a different approach, and they do have levels of how they value compliance. Is it important to them? When do you interact? How many times do you interact? Are you seeing that you're bombarding a customer with interactions? So it's hard to gauge what is a balance, a good balance, really. But for me, it's all about education. You want to speak to the customer early in the journey. We all have our own internal triggers and thresholds. So once you're happy with them, and they will vary from operator, as we know, once you're happy with them, then you're covered. But I believe that you should contact the customer early in their experience, early in their journey. As I said earlier, as a common courtesy, just to say, a bit later in this journey and using your gambling account with us, we may need to ask you some questions. We may need to check in with you. We may need documents, because they might take that opportunity then to say, well, what are you going to need from me? Mm-hmm. So it's education, gives you the chance to tell them exactly what we need and when and why. And also maybe provide them with a link to the Safer Gambling page, or to the Source of Funds page, or whichever. Mm-hmm. Just to say, have a look at it. These are the tools that can help you. Certainly when you're doing your interaction, I think you should get as much out of that as possible, rather than, one thing I hate is when the Safer Gambling team calls you, and then a week later, the Source of Funds guy calls you, and then maybe 10 days later, someone calls you from payments or something. Let's just do it in one call. Let's make the journey as straightforward, as easy for the customer to understand, so that they don't get the feeling that, wow, all I want to do is have a bet, and I'm getting all different guys messaging me. On some occasions, I've known someone in my department message a customer and then maybe 60 seconds later, someone 10 feet away in another desk in another department message the customer. So operators need to look at the bigger picture, communicate internally, and say, right, what do we need with this? Well, they've hit that threshold, so when they hit that threshold, this should happen. Okay, ask the Safer Gambler team to also include a link to source of funds in their email. So I just think we can streamline what we need to do. We do have to do it. That is important. And a wise man once told me when the company I was working for didn't really see the importance of compliance, and they said it was too expensive. And a wise man once told me, well, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. And that, will always stay with me, because if you don't do the things you've got to do, you will fall foul and run the risk of maybe getting penalised. So for me, let's make sure that we interact with the customer early in the journey as a courtesy and to educate them. That's my best practice.
It's also what you say, like a way to build rapport at an early stage, because sometimes people, you only get a call to get some bad news,
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. You should, if I was to phone a customer today and they said, can I take your name? I give them my name, give them as much information as you can. They might want to come back and ask for you in the future. It's, again, they spoke to you, they know you, you know them, and then they get that feeling of, well, actually, I put the phone down and that guy actually cares about me and cares about my gambling. I've heard in my last role, I was doing some QA. So I had to listen to a lot of the calls, check a lot of the written communication. And it was quite refreshing to hear a lot of people who had accounts with us at various stages, mainly the newer ones, saying, thank you for taking the time to picking up the phone and checking in with me. I am fine, but I realise why you've made the call. Now, I remember a particular time when Conor McGregor was fighting Floyd Mayweather. Now, Conor McGregor's a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yeah,
I
thought that you
unbeaten boxer. Do you remember the fight years ago?
Yeah. My weather, Conor McGregor. I thought that you were going to say that Conor McGregor called to place a bet.
No. I wouldn't really like to call him to make sure his gambling's okay, because he probably swear down the phone a lot. But I remember the fight, and I think the prices were something like 2-7 for Mayweather to win, so he was the odds-on favourite. And I remember a lot of people in the days when, if you lived in the UK, you could bet on credit, were opening up accounts with credit cards and having bigger than usual bets, because in their opinion, they was stealing money from the bookmakers. So one guy had £700 to win 200. One guy might have had £10,000. But they were all prepared to take the chance. And then we had to check in with them to say, is everything okay? Your normal gambling is £5, £10, £20. Suddenly we see you've had £700. Is everything okay? One guy in particular said, yeah, I'm fine. He said, I just thought that was an opportunity to win me some money. As it turned out, Mayweather did win the fight. So they did win money if they took that chance. But again, we have to interact with them and say, listen, gambling it's not a surefire way to make money. It should be treated as an enjoyable pastime and entertainment. And certainly don't think just because Mayweather is a great fighter that he's guaranteed to win the fight. But things like that was about education, explaining to the customer, what would you have done if that bet would not have come in? Would that have put you in an awkward situation? And a lot of them found it refreshing to say, yeah, I thought I was doing a real sensible, guaranteed thing. We had to explain to them that nothing's guaranteed in life apart from tax and death, so.
Yeah. The old HMRC tax guy. So it looks a bit like the Grim Reaper, no? I wanted to ask you, because what advice would you give, to, new people that they're coming into a safer gambling team?
So like a new A new
New
agent.
starter, yeah,
Yeah.
new safer gambling team agent. You know, you go
Yeah.
there.
I think it's important, very important, to explain that safer gambling affects our customers, affects our licenses, and affects our staff. That's the first thing I would do. Um, you might get someone who's coming working for you who has themselves a gambling problem. So as much as they might speak to a customer who's lost all their money and they want to self-exclude or maybe asking for the money back, the guy that's the agent might have also had a similar experience and might be emotionally involved with that call because, that's basically where they've been in their life at times. So I think they should be educated at induction about the importance of how we help our customers, how we can help our staff, and how we have to protect our licenses. Some people are not aware of the safer gambling policy, maybe within the first week of starting at a company. But I would certainly sit down and take the time, because I know there's a lot to take in for a new starter, especially in week one with lots of different presentations and online learning. I'd just take the time to speak to them individually and just say, listen, here's what you need to know. Ask a question. Do you gamble yourself? That might have been asked in the interview. I personally would ask that in the interview as well. And just make sure that they're okay and make sure they understand the situations that they could possibly face. They may get someone crying down the phone, they may get someone threatening to take their own life, which is a real tough scenario. Should you get, and obviously I know we've done training with you in the past at various companies I've worked for, and you know and you highlight very well the importance of harming and how to deal with that on a telephone call, remaining calm, etc. So, like I say, it's a combination of in the interview, not scaring them away, but being open and honest with them to explain the role. And then when they start, actually walking them through it so that they don't get caught out, so that they're prepared and they've got the right tools to do the job.
It's important. That all the things that you say. When you were talking about in the interview phase, something that I used to do all the time was to do a role play. Pretending that I was a person affected by, gambling related harm. And it's funny because many of the people that I work with, they have been keep doing that. So it's quite. So I always put them in a situation where they can't win. So to see how much can I, push the agents into a really really difficult situation. At the end, I said, look, there was not a right option. Is just to see how you can deal with pressure. Also, an interesting thing that you mentioned is that you ask them about their own gambling, and all this sort of thing, and, probably you have experience, about, colleagues getting into difficult situation with gambling themselves. Have you ever had to help out a colleague that was struggling?
Yeah, I have, Pedro. I've had to help a few, and I've got a story for you where one of my friends was a really, really good trader working at a gambling company in Gibraltar. And he had some personal issues. He ended up leaving the company. And sadly, one of his parents passed away and left him a large amount of money. Now, he ended up gambling that. He gambled it all. And he ended up on the streets. And then he ended up in prison. And he's now living back in the UK. So, that was someone who was a normal, everyday guy, suddenly got a lot of money, was able to gamble to larger amounts and lost everything that he'd been left, all his inheritance. He lost all of it, close to £100,000, and he gambled it all away. And yes, he's got to take some responsibility himself for what he's done, but also, could the operators have done any more for him? A lot of it that he did was in a casino. My experience of going in a casino it's not as strict, and I don't get the feeling that the casinos are on the ball as the remote online gambling operators are. Personally, my experience of casinos is, no one really checks in too much. No one asks, are you all right? No one asks where you get your money from. And he did a lot of his money in casinos. So for me, I think that, it's hard. We know the message we're trying to send. We have to do what we can do to keep people safe. And a lot of it, as I say, comes down to education. Even in the interaction, asking the person, why have you opened this account? What can we expect to see from you? Why are you going to be gambling on casino? Are you going to be betting on sports? Are you going to be betting in play? Taking the time to build their profile up, so that if you see, are you going to be gambling late at night between 12 and 6 a.m. and keep that on record, so that if you see anything out of character, then you can say, well, last time we spoke, you said you'd never ever gamble between 12 and 6. We noticed you've gambled between 2 and 5. Can you explain what happened? And, it's just taking the time, educating the customer, making them aware of how we can help them, telling them how they can contact us, making sure they've got our number or the email address, saying we're here 24/7, if that's the case. Sending them a link in an email or in a chat to say, here's a link to the Safer Gambling page, have a look about it. Because some people, they don't even know there is a Safer Gambling page. And then they would maybe come back to us and say, well, no one told me, and now I've lost a load of money, which I can't afford to lose. I feel that if you had explained that to me, maybe I wouldn't have got carried away and self-excluded. So let's tell them, let's be open and honest. Tell everyone the ways in which we can help them. Let them get to know us. Let us get to know them, and let's have an enjoyable, open and honest relationship with the customers, and keep them gambling with us for longer. That's the ideal.
It's interesting that you mentioned traders, because I remember a couple of colleagues who were traders. They end up having problems themselves. It's like, okay, I'm making money for the company. Actually, I can also do it for myself. And I think sometimes maybe when it's not your own money, you can keep your head a bit cooler than when it's your own money, the one that you're trading with. You mentioned also that the friend when at the end to the UK. Something that I also have noticed is that sometimes you get people that they move, I don't know, to Malta or to other city in the UK, or to Gibraltar, and they can be a bit lonely. They don't have this sort of social support. I think sometimes what you were saying, okay, may have a parent, the parent pass, the person may, I don't know, maybe grieving, may not have the support, and end up gambling to go with the situation. That's that's sad, but there should be some more support. So sometimes I feel a bit like, the gambling companies, they're all like, yay, we're a family, but the minute that they're making changes or whatever, or they need to get rid of someone, okay, we're not a family anymore. We're getting rid of the whole fifth floor and stuff. So what do you think companies can do to support a little bit more holistically their staff?
I think there is more they can do. For example, a classic example, which I experienced in the last place I was working, there was an email that went around to say, at 2:00 today, there's going to be a gaming company, a gaming provider coming in, and we're, basically they're trying to sell us a new product. So if you want to come upstairs and play this new slot game, there's free pizza, and come and play the free slot game, and you might win a prize also. Now in that email originally, which went out, it didn't mention at all anything about, if you've got any problems with gambling yourself, please speak to us. Anything about the Safer Gambling policy, who the person to contact was if they had any gambling concerns themselves, because it's like someone working in McDonald's who might be 10 stone, and then they've been working there for a few months and they're thinking, well, I get free burgers here, may as well eat a few burgers because I'm allowed them. Suddenly they're putting on weight and the weight goes up to 15 stone, 20 stone. The health is bad. They've now become obese, and you think to yourself, well, did McDonald's try and help them, or did they just say, listen, free shakes, free food, help yourself. We don't have to do anything more, but you're entitled to them. And it's similar to gambling, really. Gambling's all around you. I didn't personally like the email that went out, and I told my manager so. I said, that's great, saying come and have free pizza and maybe win a prize, but there's nothing in that email about safer gambling at all. So you might get someone who has a gambling problem or who has had a gambling problem coming upstairs, trying pizza. Okay, it's free, and they might win a prize. But you're still then maybe sparking that, that light, that flame in the head to think, wow, I've enjoyed that. I'm eating pizza. I've got a free experience, and I've also just won an iPod. And now tonight when I finish work, I'm going to open up an account again and try to gamble again. So after I raised it, they did send some correspondence out in the future that had some related, some content about safer gambling. But for sure, you've got to make people aware of, the fact that they're working in the gambling industry and ways in which we can help them internally and externally should they feel at any time their gambling has got out of control. And that could be might be something, I don't know, it could be someone who is a trader who watches a guy win a lot of money, starts to follow the guy's tip, try and win a lot of money himself. The tips don't win. He ends up in trouble, then thinks, wow, what do I do now? He might want to move departments and come and work in the safer gambling department to maybe help to get him away from the trading, the things he will see there, and maybe help address his own problems. So there's lots more that companies can do for sure. I think it's very important to do regular check-ins with internal staff, as we do with the customers. However we do that can be decided, but for certain, safer gambling week once a year, that's not enough. That's not enough for just the customer. That's not enough for your staff. We should be doing it more regularly.
It's really, interesting what you say, because, I remember in a company that I work for, I find out that some of my staff, they were actually, looking at big winners, and they were like payday. They were sort of mirroring bets. We realized what was going on. I was okay. We're just going to ban. If anybody's checking an account from someone that hasn't contacted us, and it was tough. And I remember that you get kids. That it's payday. They know that this guy, it's a big winner. Sometimes the traders let people that they're very knowledgeable, to put, a few thousand, so they get okay, so it's more likely to happen. And it was a bit of an issue. It's sometimes, particularly with young guys, they can be, with young staff, can be very impressionable. So
very much.
It's good. The other thing, that I was thinking when you were talking is that I also remember a company where we both work at different times, and that they were encouraging all the staff to to have a company account, and I remember flagging that, and it didn't go down very well. You said, look, this is a bit of a hazard. It's like, okay, you work in a pub and you can have, like the McDonald's guy, a few pints a day. Okay, it's maybe a perk, but in the long run may not be good for you. It's
very true. It's very true that the pub analogy is also a good one, because you might get someone who help yourself to a few, or helps themselves to a few drinks because they're there and it's all around them, or the person in a food place or whatever it is. So I think there's certainly more that can be done, and some are more active than others at doing it, but it's something I would raise if I went to a new company, just to say this should not be overlooked. What do we do for our staff to make sure? Because in an audit situation, you'd probably be asked the question, and if you don't do anything, it doesn't put you in a good light, really.
I never got asked in any sort of you know regulator assessment from different jurisdiction or anything about safer gambling for your own staff. So that's an interesting one. I wanted to ask you, because probably you have seen like really tough stuff, through all this year. Is there any customer, that have stuck with you? That's okay. This,
Yeah,
tough one.
There was there was one guy that I personally took a lot of pride for closing him down. He was when I was working on the VIP team at a company, and the guy used to come through to any of the VIP agents, and I was one of the VIP agents. So he used to come through and place bets, not too often at first, not too often, but over time came on more frequently, and then the bets were increasing with the stake size, etc., etc. So we had to do an interaction, which I did, and I was told everything's fine. And then we was having conversations with the customer when they'd been clearly having a drink, and I had a concern with that they were placing bets when they were drinking. Then he was going to a jurisdiction on holiday that they weren't allowed to gamble from, but they told me on the telephone call that, I'm going on holiday tomorrow. And I said, oh, where are you going? Going to America. I said, you can't gamble from there. I'm going to have to close your account down until you come back. And they said, okay, jokingly, I'll cancel the holiday, but they told us that they were going on holiday, said you can't gamble from there. Anyway, this customer was a celebrity, is still on the TV right now, and started to phone my personal phone, not my mobile, my desk phone at work, because it must have come up when I dialed him with my extension. So he called me and he directly wanted to talk to me. Can you unrestrict my account? Can you do this? Can you do that? I said, I can't at the moment. I said, and this call isn't recorded. I need to phone you back on a recorded line. Started to get abusive, clearly had gambling problems. So I raised it to my manager, and we took the customer to a steering group committee where we discuss any customer of concerns. And a decision was taken to set in a limit based upon their earnings and the proof of earnings, and still problems was ongoing. So I said, listen, I believe that this customer has got a huge gambling problem. We know their income, but they're phoning me on my personal phone now every day. I said, I believe that we need to close this account. I've got concerns and I don't feel comfortable letting them gamble. So we made a decision to close this customer. And years later, maybe 5 years, 3 years later, maybe, the customer was on the TV and actually broke down and admitted to their gambling problem. So at the time when I was speaking to the customer, I sent them all the support organizations that were out there. The customer, no, I haven't got a gambling problem. And I said, well, I'm sorry, we're not taking any more bets from you. And they, again, was abusive down the phone. And I said, listen, I'm just worried about you. And I want to make sure that we don't take any more money off you because it seems that you're gambling too much, way beyond your means. So we took the decision to cease trading. And as I say, he went and gambled elsewhere. And in years to come, he actually broke down in tears live on TV. And then the world saw that he was a problem gambler, So it was one of the occasions that I was glad I went with my gut instinct. I'm glad I treated that person as a customer, as a human being, and not just as a money-making machine. And I think it's important that we do that. I think it's important that we treat customers as if they were our friends or our family. And I know we can't put our arm around them, as so to speak, because we're talking down the phone or sending a message on an email. But I feel we should do everything we can for that customer to make sure that we look after them. And on that occasion, that was something that I did. I was glad I did.
That's good. That in that occasion you got supported. But I also have been in some committees. And it's difficult when you say, look, I think we should, have a conversation with this customer or try to set limits or close the account. Now less, but back in the days, it was like fighting tooth and nail. To do the right thing. And you get many, commercial people that may say, well, if you close the account, it's just going to go somewhere else, or
Yeah.
What do you do, to change their hearts, to try to change the mind, okay, there's always the regulatory risk. Okay, we may get a fine, or we may get additional license conditions or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you normally use to convince, back in the days, like this sort of commercial focused people?
Well, I mean, in the steering group meetings, there always had to be two directors present. One was commercial and one was compliance. Always had to be those present, because there was one occasion where I remember being in a meeting, and a customer had sent us a bank statement, and they'd sold the house, and they had a balance of something like £100,000 left over after buying the new house. So they sold it, bought a new one, 100,000 was the bank balance. So I posed the question, because I used to chair the meeting, if you like, how much are we comfortable letting this guy lose this year? And the commercial response was 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
To which the compliance director laughed and said, how can we do that? And he said, well, he's got it in his bank. But there's always a phrase which I still use to this day, Pedro, which I always will use, and it's setting the customer a fair and reflective limit. So, if someone sends you £1 million in the bank, do you let them go and lose $1 million? Where do you draw the line? So for me, you should be setting your customer fair and reflective limits. And on this occasion, the commercial director said 100,000, and the compliance director said, no. He said, okay, I understand he's got cash, but the maximum will be 50,000. And even though it was discussed and debated quite a little, if those two directors couldn't come to an agreement, it was escalated to the CEO. That was the process that we had. So they came to an agreement that it would be £50,000, and then we would review it after that, if that figure was ever reached.
It's I think in many occasions, the Gambling Commission have made our life easier in terms of, okay, when you set rules, that, okay, commercial interests, shouldn't be involved when you're assessing a person in terms of safer gambling. That was one that was very good. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And the other one about the funds, it's okay that that you get one in a life, or funds, that they are not, okay, this is not regular income. If you sell the house, or if you get inheritance, or if you get a redundancy package, that's, I think, have been very helpful, because I remember those cases. You get a person that shows bank statement, they sold their house, 300K, $500,000, it's okay, let's raise the limits. I said, no.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to have money that allows you to gamble, comfortably, affordably, sustainably, all those things. And just because someone's got 100,000, we shouldn't let them lose it. And it's all right saying, well, it's their decision. Well, it is, yeah. But we've also got our own responsibility to say, we appreciate you being honest and telling us what you've got. Let's review it again in a few months' time. But for now, we're happy for you to lose X. You might also, another thing as well, before I forget, Pedro, you might get someone who says, yeah, I've just sold my house, £100,000, but they might have just lost £100,000 in the last 12 months with another operator. That might have been why they sold the house. You don't know.
Yeah.
So it's always good to get an overall bigger picture, not just commit yourself to thinking whatever you tell me, we'll go with that. Ask them, are you gambling anywhere else? Obviously, if you get a bank statement from them, that's a great insight into their, their day-to-day working life. You can see where they shop, you can see what they buy, you can see if are they gambling elsewhere. You can see everything. And some people don't like you to know that, but it is a great thing to see, because then for example, there was a place I worked at where someone put on the bank statement a loan, one of these quick, I think it was called Quick Quid or something, the payday loans.
Yeah.
So that was on the bank statement. And also there was a company called, a legal company, and it just had the initials and then legal. So I just copied and pasted it from the bank statement and put it in Google, and up come a debt recovery agency.
Yeah.
And it'd been missed by the team who were checking these documents. They didn't know what this TSN legal, I think it was called. They didn't know what that was. But take the time to be inquisitive, check it out. All I did was Google it quickly.
Yeah, the thing that you mentioned, sometimes it's difficult, for teams to do their work, when they want to be like sort of a factory farm. Okay, you get KYC stuff, and they get the bank statement, and they just check that the postcode is correct, and they may get a bank statement with things that they're okay, guys. Please, if you have a document, have a at least do an eyeballing, not just check that the proof of address is fine. So it's tough, sometimes, because I've been in a lot of situations where the staff have a backlog, they need to go, they would like to do a better quality job. You ask for headcount, you don't get it, so it can be a bit difficult sometimes. If you were the gambling commission, what additional thing do you think that you will introduce to further protect customers or make things easier, from a safer gambling perspective?
I don't know. I mean, I know that there's changes that have come in over the years. I know the financial vulnerability checks at the moment. I think, is it 500 net deposits over rolling 30 days or something like that? There's ways that they're trying to make us do more, which I encourage, because then you get an early feel for your customer in the journey. As I say, if they want to show and prove they can gamble beyond what we're being told to check for, then that gives you the level of comfort that you're looking for. And it's important to establish that early in the journey. But I mean, we're always making sure. I think it's important that the Gambling Commission tell us what their focus is, help us as operators to, they're never going to tell us everything, because they wouldn't, if they told us everything, they wouldn't need to be a commission in effect, because they just say, there's your rules and go with them. But everyone's accountable for their own performance and implementing what they believe are the right restrictions and thresholds, etc. So I think they need to work with us for sure. I think they've done that better over the years. But I just think you need to be open and honest with us and work with us and provide support to us. It's important to get support, advice and guidance from the commission to us as an operator, and for the customers from us as an operator. The commission doesn't really, until it's a complaint, deal with the customer directly. They entrust us to do the right thing, but we need some support, advice and guidance for sure. So I just think if they continue to work with us as they've done better over the years, because it has been over the years, going back quite a few, definitely an us and them situation. I believe over recent times now we're working together, we're working better, and learn from other findings as well. It's all in the public domain. There was a couple that I've seen online today. Whatever is out there, have a look, and they show us. They put, even if you sign up for the e-bulletin every 2 weeks, that will show you what's going on, what they're, maybe have a fortnightly meeting with your compliance team to review everything that they posted in the e-bulletin. Because again, that's a way of them reaching out to show you what's going on and what some advice, So I think they've certainly got better over the years, and I think they should continue to work closely with the operators, and long may that continue, hopefully.
Yeah, I think a help desk will be fine, to be able to check with them, because I remember that there's some, not the UKGC, but I remember all the regulators that if you ever ask a question, you've been put in the bit like, oh, why are you asking this question? It's like, look, I just want to have clarity on this, or my interpretation is this, but not entirely sure. So I think was you also mentioned like the soft checks. I think that they recently changed from 500 to, I think, 150 perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's been reduced again. Yeah, but it's for the right reasons. I mean, you can say, are they overreacting? Again, you can go on the ONS website, the government website for the UK, and you can find out statistics there which you should be using. Look what the average wage is. Look, use things to your advantage. Whatever's out there, there's tools like TransUnion and things where you can find out about your customers, and it helps you to build their profile, which comes back to due diligence. Do your checks, learn about the customer, make sure you update the information. Someone might be okay today and have a job and not have a drink problem, and then tomorrow they lose the job, and they start drinking, they start arguing with the wife, they lose the wife and kids move. You just have to make sure you check in with people regularly, as a courtesy, make sure they're okay. But I think certainly we're getting better. I always have a little saying, which is good, better, and best. And it's a rhyme that my grandma used to tell me when I was a young boy. And she's not here now, God rest her soul. But it was good, better, best. I will never rest until my good is better and my better is best. That's what she always used to tell me. And I carry that through my working life and personal life. And I think as long as you keep striving to do that, you'll do the right thing. In an audit situation, you can show that you care about what you do. You can take on board the recommendations as well. You've got to be welcoming. And like I say, just ask for the support, advice, and guidance. I think it's crucial. You might think what you're doing is great. You might be doing more than you need to. I've been in an audit before where the commissioner said, that's great, but, don't feel you have to do it as much as you're doing it. But, what you were doing is great, but we'd be happy if you did it to a lesser degree. So again, it's them giving us advice, feedback. And then we know, are we not doing enough? Are we doing too much? So, and again, I always have a saying to, probably goes back to what you asked me about a new starter earlier. What sort of things would you say to a new starter? I always say that we'll never get in trouble for doing too many interactions, but we will get in trouble if we don't do enough. So pick up the phone, whatever you need to do, and just check in from time to time with people just to make sure they're okay. If they say they're fine, hopefully they understand that you're there to support them should they ever need you. And in my experience, a lot of people will put the phone down and appreciate that call. So you've got to, because we don't work in retail, everything we do is over the phone or through a computer in cyberspace. It's very important. It's very important that we do all we can in safer gambling and speak to people, let them know we're here. tell them what we do and how we can help them, give them our phone number, give them a link to the website, check in with them regularly, and then hopefully that's our bit of the garden covered.
Fantastic. Phil, we're coming to the end of the episode. Anything that, I don't know, would you like to, do you think that we're missing or that we should talk about?
No, I think a lot of the time, I've been in the industry, as I say, 22 years from the telebetting days. I've seen all the changes. It's drastically changed, as we said at the beginning of this chat, from, used to be lots of telephone communication. Now there's hardly any. In another 22 years, probably be different again, especially with AI and everything. But I think you just have to review and refresh what you do. Have a look at everything. Don't rest on it and don't think, well, that's that now for the next year. That'll be good. You've got to factor in any changes that come via the commission throughout the year and make sure that they're embedded in everything that you do. So as long as you do that regularly and review and refresh your processes and procedures and communicate it to the team and to the wider business, I think that's all you can do, because you have to react to changes and make sure that you're doing everything that you should be doing. So, yeah, we don't know how it's going to change, but I think if you do those things, Pedro, review and refresh what it is you do, keep on top of everything you should be doing, then that's everything you can be doing, really. But should you ever need for any support, advice and guidance, feel free that you can discuss that with your manager or with external companies, like the service you provide as well. If you can recruit any external training, I think it's vital that happens. It really is important. We've seen the benefits of doing that over the years at all the different companies I've worked in, with businesses like yourself and others coming in and helping you to break down really some of the jargon that may have been spoken over the years. And at least you simplify it for us and say, listen, this is what that means. This is what they're looking for. This is what you now need to do. So, yeah, very important to keep you on side and involved and work together. We've known each other for years, and long may that continue. And certainly, I would say safer gambling is important. It's not going to go away. And just make sure we do everything that we need to do and treat people as people, not as profit.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Phil. I have enjoyed a lot our conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pedro. Always nice to talk to you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Okay.
Yeah.